The other thing that I've learned as a journalist is that, any event, any experience, any moment, there are like multiple angles on that. So that you could pull multiple stories out of so many different things, right? It just depends on the way you want to frame it, or the takeaway for your audience there. I think that's a big piece of it. So you want to think about what your audience needs, and that's the angle you go for on the story. Welcome to the Storycraft Podcast for storytellers. I'm your host, Meg Adams, and I'm here to help you explore how stories shape our connections. Wondering how stories help you network in advance? Looking to bridge online and face-to-face worlds, foster understanding, and ignite innovation? Look no further. Whether you're a leader, communicator, educator, or just love a good story, join us for actionable insights and real talk with professional storytellers, all aimed at helping you build stronger, better connections. I get asked a lot about how I find stories and how I am consistently and constantly coming up with stories to tell about my life, to share my brand, and to help connect with people, like-minded people who I want to be in relationship and community with. So there are, I think, a few things that hold most people back when it comes to sharing their stories, and I think both have to do with overwhelm. So it's easy for us to get overwhelmed when it comes to sharing our stories because one, I hear a lot of people say, my life is so boring, or I don't really have anything interesting to say, or, I'm growing, I'm evolving, and I'm afraid that I might say the wrong thing, and I don't even really know what I stand for or what I'm about. That's okay. I think that's actually really awesome that that you are a work in progress, that you are evolving and growing in whether that's your area, whether that's your, expertise, whether that's your brand or your life. But what people want to connect to is that journey. And so when you share your stories, another way to think about them is to think about all of the mini lessons that you are learning every day throughout your life. What are the moments and experiences that you're having on your journey that will serve your audience? That is really how you use storytelling to build a brand, but more than that, to build a really beautiful community of people around you who will make your life richer and more fulfilling. And so there are obviously numerous ways to tell these stories, but to find them, I think there are a few things you can do. But I want to back up a little bit first and really remind you what the definition of a story is. So when I refer to storytelling, I'm really talking about, stories as being a personal narrative. So really, it's just an experience or a moment in your life that taught you something or revealed something to you that, again, you think would be beneficial to share with other people. Some of those experiences and moments are happening to you in real time. That's exciting. Others are, experiences from your past that you now have perspective on, enough perspective that you feel like you are in a position to share those stories. And I think that there's a clear boundary there too. I think sometimes as we go through stuff, like it's okay to keep things private and close to heart. I really believe that having boundaries around storytelling is important too, so that whatever you share, you're comfortable and confident in putting that story out there. And sometimes it takes time for us to have processed experiences and moments enough to feel that comfort and confidence in sharing them. So that's a caveat. But one of the things that I really love is to journal. So I always am either on my phone, like taking notes or writing stuff down. I was at a meeting this morning, actually, in a presentation of a friend of mine's, and she's talking about her nonprofit organization. Shout out to Amanda at Compassion Delivered. And she was reminding me as she spoke about the importance of relational currency. And I was like, man, Amanda is such a good friend to me. She's been so wonderful and has checked in, and she has this beautiful nonprofit serving people in our home community. And so I was like, wow, I really want to spotlight Amanda. And I think in that moment I was really kind of processing how much she meant to me and how much she inspired me in her work, because I was just sitting there again being reminded of all that she does. And I was like, oh, this is a great idea for a social post, because I can talk about, something that I know and I care about, which is storytelling for relationship building and community. And at the same time, I can highlight my friend Amanda and what she's doing. So I just took notes like on the piece of paper I had in front of me, and I will post that later this week. So again, it's these moments in your life where you feel that there's something that you have to share. And it doesn't have to be big. That's the other thing I want to remind you. I think a lot of people get tripped up because they think that stories have to be these very large dramatic events in their life. But it can just be, the time you're sitting in your backyard looking at a rose bush and you were reminded of, your grandma's rose bush and how she tended to it. Or you remember, a memory, right? And so if it's meaningful to you and you feel like your audience could connect to you through whatever that story is, that's how you tell it. And so I use the story of the rose bush as an example because it popped into my head, but also because the other thing that I've learned as a journalist is that, any event, any experience, any moment, there are multiple angles on that. So that you could pull multiple stories out of so many different things, right? It just depends on the way you want to frame it, or the takeaway for your audience there. I think that's a big piece of it. So you want to think about what your audience needs, and that's the angle you go for on the story. Maybe you're looking for more stories to tell, so you pick a different angle on the same thing. Or maybe you're reading a blog online and some insight occurred to you that you want to share with your audience. You can hop on camera and tell them about that. So there are really, again, storytelling is infinite in possibilities, but always go back to those basics and think about an experience that you've had or a moment in your life where you felt something, you learned something resonated with you, you were overwhelmed with emotion, and make sure that it's going to benefit your audience, the people that you're speaking to. And then the other thing, this is going a little bit deeper for you than finding stories, but I always try to think about the emotion. So what's the emotion that I want my audience to feel as they interact with a story? Do I want to make them laugh? Do I want them to, be moved to action? Do I just want to encourage them or inspire them? And again, think about that. And I would try to be somewhat consistent in that tone as well. But I think it's important to remember what type of emotion you want to connect with your audience. And again, that could go back to the emotions that you felt in that moment. And you could share those emotions, because my guess is that even though people haven't had that exact same experience that you had, they're going to connect with you because of the emotion. So start journaling, start pulling your stories out, and start just becoming more self-aware. Again, what am I learning? How am I growing? What have I learned? What do I have to offer? And my last piece of advice when it comes to finding stories is one that I've had to learn over and over again, which is get over yourself. Get over yourself and start focus on serving your audience. What do they want to hear from you? This story might seem so silly to you, but they care. They care. And it's probably how they're going to connect with you, over the silly stories, over the insignificant moments, but the experiences that changed you, right? If you think about how you connect to people in person, think about your friends, the people who know you the best, and think about the types of things that you share with them, right? Maybe, again, you had this really great experience. Who's the first person you want to call, and how are you going to tell that story? I mean, we have so many ways to tell that story through photographs, videos. We can tell somebody in person. We can share all of these moments with each other, and that's where really the magic of storytelling happens, when we are authentic and genuine and honest in what we're doing. So I hope that this episode has inspired you to share your stories and hopefully helps you find them. I don't know if I talked specifically about how to find them, but I think hopefully just that reminder that, again, these are just things that are happening to you all the time. Just slow down a little bit and recognize them. Think about them, and don't give yourself a break. It doesn't have to be this dramatic, overwhelming thing. You don't have to spend hours agonizing over the story you want to tell. It just has to be significant, and it has to be memorable, and again, it has to offer something to your audience. If you have any questions about this or want to know more, please do reach out to me. I'd be happy to answer questions in another episode or with you directly. But I do hope this helps, and I hope that you get out there and start sharing your stories. We're so glad you've listened to this podcast episode. If you liked it, would you mind doing us a favor? Share this episode with someone who would be interested in the topic too. We're on a mission to help everyone become a better storyteller. And don't forget to subscribe to the show to get updated every time we release a new episode. Each and every episode is produced, hosted, and edited by us, Meg and Kyle Adams at Homeplace Creative. Happy storytelling!